Cool. Can everybody hear me all right? How's everybody doing? Hope lunch was pretty excellent. I just scarfed down some food. My name is Mike Brown. I'm a systems engineer with ForeScout. We have a product called Counteract, which I'm going to be giving you guys some insight into today. So Counteract is a solution that's based primarily around visibility. It's a visibility platform. And so you can see on the screen here, transforming security through visibility. So you'll hear me talk a lot about visibility and why it's important and what we actually mean. So the way we actually go through our visibility platform and the full value proposition of Counteract is with these three words here. See, control, and orchestrate, which I'm sure everybody's heard orchestrate a fair amount. What I'm going to do is I'm going to dive into each of these categories individually and kind of talk about what I'm referring to. So the first pillar with C, it's essentially visibility into every IP-connected device on your network or anything that has a MAC address on the network and is connected to a piece of managed infrastructure. So the idea is, a lot of times when we talk about visibility and how we're actually, what we're seeing, what we can see on the network, a lot of people kind of contain that down to something like the endpoints or the phones or BYOD devices. With Counteract, what we're talking about with visibility is every single IP-connected device. That's infrastructure, that's managed switches, access points, routers, servers. A lot of customers will kind of start out and put Counteract in the campus, and then as they get comfortable with the visibility and what it's capable of providing, they'll move it into the data center, and then we've now got cloud offerings as well as what we call operational technology. So operational technology, to give you a little insight into that, is more or less any kind of technology that is relevant for an organization to provide the services that they provide. So in the healthcare industry, something like MRI machines, heart pumps, in a factory environment, something like SCADA, so on and so forth. So all these different types of networks that have historically been either air-gapped or kind of sensitive to some traditional types of visibility, we actually are shining that visibility and that light into those locations as well. So again, kind of coming back down to what we're capable of seeing when it comes to Counteract's breadth of visibility, there's a lot of context to the endpoints. So initially, when you got your traditional types of devices, things like Mac, Linux, Windows, you want to know if that Mac, Linux, Windows is yours, not yours, if it's corporate, non-corporate, who's logged in. So once we have management or once we've seen a Windows machine, what we're going to try to do is identify whether or not that's a corporate device. And if it is, we can find out who's logged in and basically get more user context about that endpoint. In addition to that kind of user awareness, who owns the device? Is it a corporate-owned Windows machine, or is it a corporate user logged into a BYOD device on the network? In addition, the type of device, so Mac, Linux, Windows, but we also operate very heavily in the IoT space and some of your non-standard types of operating systems. So this is where the visibility is really becoming important today. These solutions, or these new types of devices that are coming on the network cannot be managed via an agent. And this is where how we actually do our visibility becomes very powerful. Traditionally, you would have to have an agent on it, and then it would check in with your solution to let you know that it was on the network. But the device is the dirty device. Devices leave the network, they go out to the wild, they get infected, they come back, and they bring whatever malicious anything with it. So we can't rely on the device anymore to actually tell us about its presence on the network. So what we're doing is we're going to actually lean on the network infrastructure to actually kind of give us insight into that. And I'll dive a little more into what I'm talking to about that in a few moments. But in addition to IoT, switch it, or the actual information about where it's connected, how it's connected on the network, and then the actual hygiene of the device. Does it have its patches? Does it have antivirus installed, running and up to date? Is the local firewall configured? So being able to understand that and then make a decision on, when I jump into control in a few minutes, about what you're actually going to do with that device while it's on the network. But the real key thing, again, really driving home the visibility, it's an unprecedented amount of visibility. A lot of customers aren't familiar with, and on average, when we go in to do like a POC, customers will generally find 30% more devices on the network than they were actually expecting. And I've seen a handful of cases where there was 10x, really one time. But it was pretty profound, and it was it was a big deal for the customer. But yeah, just really highlighting the visibility. It's gathering everything that is connecting to the network and being able to put it into a single pane of glass for you to be able to understand what it is, where it is and what it's doing on your network. And in addition to that, it's continuous and in real time. So it's not just kind of a one-time thing where it access is provisioned onto the network, and then you just kind of let it go from there. We're going to check back in on this device in 30 minutes or 60 minutes or whatever it's going to be. Did it stop its antivirus service? Did they uninstall patch or whatever it might be? But the idea is you have to maintain that visibility in the post-authenticated environment, because the devices, they can get compromised afterward. Does this MAC address still have the same operating system that it had beforehand? So when we, again, kind of was talking too with how we see. So back to the way we're gathering visibility to the endpoint. Agentless is pretty key, especially in the IoT kind of realm. You can't install agents on these machines because they are just non-standard operating systems and they won't support it. So what we're doing is we're taking the onus off of the device and we're actually talking to the trusted infrastructure. We want to talk to switches, routers, access points, anything that's considered trusted and is understood by the organization as corporate. It's going to let us know, it's basically the first inkling of the fact that a device is connecting to the network. We're scraping CAM tables, ARP tables for basic connectivity, and then to kind of expedite discovery of these endpoints, we also leverage like SNMP traps. So if something plugs into a switch, we receive a trap, and then it lets us know that a new device was connected. Or an access point, if it associates, same thing. Trap gets forwarded along to us, and we now know that this device was connected to the network immediately. Now that's basic connectivity. We have MAC and IP information out of that. It comes to the classification of the endpoint and understanding what it is. Some of the other parameters here are kind of help with actually identifying the actual type of device. So things like DHCP forwarding or mirrored traffic. With either one of those, we can capture DHCP information, and Windows Machine X for a MAC address, a IP address differently than a Macintosh does. And same thing goes for all these other ones, all the other types of endpoints connecting to the network. So being able to capture some of this data, they're basically all kind of data points. And what we're doing is we're building a profile for each of the endpoints that says, this guy has this MAC address. There's a lightweight Nmap scan that will do. They have these open ports. This is how it responds to a SYN packet. With that collection, what we're doing is we're making a profile for that endpoint specifically. And what we've done over time is actually team up with our customers who have put together their own kind of profiles for how they classified certain devices on their network. And what we actually created was a cloud-hosted signature platform, or signature repository that is available to all of our customers. So what we've been able to do with some of our most recent revisions of Counteract is we went from being able to having to write manual classification policies for endpoints to now it's actually built and baked into the product. Anybody that writes a signature, we upload it, scrub it, QA it, and we make it available to all customers. So we actually went from roughly 60% accuracy to classification of an endpoint up to actually 90% now as soon as we plug into the network. So we're actually classifying the devices right out of the gate using this cloud platform, which is only getting enriched as time goes on. And then in addition, we also operate as a Radius server, leverage NetFlow, you can capture a little bit of different information kind of using a few of the different parameters. One of the key things that you kind of point out here is it's a very flexible solution. None of any one of these is like 100% required. Basically, it allows you to pick and choose what's necessary to address for the use cases that you're kind of faced with, and then we can go ahead and kind of implement what's necessary and then help you kind of address those use cases. So that's how we see. That second pillar, which is control, it's effectively any given response to what we see. So the Counteract policy flows as if this, then that kind of policy engine. So if you see any collection of this attribute, let's say this device has MAC address XYZ and has operating system this and open ports this, but then suddenly it opens up another port, maybe it's port 23. We can actually say that this device may have been compromised and then take that device and put it into a quarantine, or maybe put an ACL around the device and not allow it to talk to certain types of services. In addition to actual quarantining or restrictive actions, notification and compliance actions or remediation actions. So if antivirus is installed but it's not up to date, we can take an action to force update the antivirus for that endpoint. Oops, sorry. There we go. And so this is kind of imperative when you talk about the challenges we're faced as security professionals. We spend a lot of time with a lot of solutions that are going to alert on certain things. We don't want to actually turn on full-blown blocking or whatever it might be because we're afraid of breaking something. So being able to take some of the information that a lot of these solutions are very good at discovering and trying to automate a remediation action versus a quarantine action is kind of imperative. It actually helps expedite how quickly you can bring an environment into compliance. Really also helps free up a lot of the organizations in your organization to actually, kind of focus on some of the work that they're actually supposed to be focusing on. And then orchestration is the third pillar. So kind of in addition to what I was mentioning before, Counteract is built to also, Counteract's very good at visibility. We can see things on the network in real time. We can understand where they are, how they're connected, and exactly what they are. A lot of solutions can benefit from this type of data, namely an asset management tool. Our integration with ServiceNow is basically designed to, let me backtrack. One of the things that we've actually noticed with a lot of organizations as we've gone in and done assessments is that asset management databases tend to be about 60% accurate, and that's being generous. So what Counteract is designed to do, the visibility that we have and how real time it is, we can dynamically populate these CMDBs. If this device was connected at this location at one given time and then hasn't shown up in a few months, but when it reconnects, it's over in some other location in the world, or that's connected to this switch when it shows up on the network. Counteract can populate that information into ServiceNow, and you have historical trending and real-time data about that endpoint and when and where it's been connected. Same thing goes with the patches about the endpoint, so on and so forth. In addition, something like an ATD. This is probably my favorite one. Threat detection solutions are very good at identifying a malicious payload being delivered to this endpoint. But most of our customers, most of what we've seen, they're deployed in an IDS mode, or intrusion detection, but not prevention. So they're not actually stopping that malicious payload. They just sandbox it and validate that that executable is actually malicious. But the payload's been delivered. Damage is technically already done. So what we can do is that solution tells Counteract about that payload, the endpoint, and the indicators of its compromise. What we do is we go out and inspect that endpoint, validate that it has been infected, and then we can then quarantine the host, remediate it, as well as inspect the surrounding network to validate that it didn't propagate. So being able to, with the visibility and the enforcement arm that Counteract's capable of providing internally, really helps complement a solution, something like an ATD sort of solution. Sorry, keep hitting my button. And then similarly, things like Splunk and so on and so forth, anything we can enrich with the type of visibility that Counteract is really kind of pulling in information in for. So a lot of times customers come to us and are trying to understand what exactly it is we're addressing for. You may have heard we've been kind of looped into the network access control quadrant for quite a while. Gartner had us up in there for years. So a lot of times when customers are coming to us, they're coming to us for a pure play network access control. It's definitely something we do. It's not the only thing we do, though. It's a very small part of it. What we actually help do is expedite how network access control is really implemented. We start in a post-connected environment, cover the majority of the vulnerabilities. We can take devices that are on the network off of the network that need to be taken off, or put other devices in the remediation. And then we can slowly roll out that pre-connect sort of environment. So authenticating the device into the network. But like I said, this really helps expedite getting the majority of the bullet points actually covered for a lot of companies that don't require pre-connect immediately. In addition to that, device compliance. I talked a little bit about things like antivirus being installed, running, and up to date. This extrapolates to any application installed, any service running. You can check for any registry. And again, just to drive this home, it's agentless. This can all be done without the use of an agent. So it's pretty profound and very quick to deploy. Network segmentation, so printers, probably the easiest kind of scenario or kind of example. Printers are probably the historical traditional IoT device, easily compromised. And the way we used to kind of combat that was we would put them on limited access printer VLANs. But then you have the people that would want the printer closer to their desk. So they would unplug it and plug it in next to their desk. And now it's on a user VLAN or a data network. What Counteract is doing is it's going to understand when that device plugs in And if it plugs into a user VLAN, it's going to profile the device as a printer and take that device and put it into its appropriate VLAN. So basically, the VLAN follows the device around the network. And that's all done automatically, so it's taking a lot of workload off of the actual either the network team or the security team or auditing team to really kind of understand where those devices are getting placed. I talked a bit about asset management. I think I drilled that one down, so I don't think we have to dive into that again. But incident response, same kind of concept as with the advanced threat detection. Another example is with something like CyberArk. We integrate with CyberArk, and their privileged threat analytics offering is something we can actually respond to. So if something is actually trying to compromise or use credentials that CyberArk is either cycled out or initiating or kind of exhibiting some sort of malicious behavior that is, around a password, basically it can respond or counteract the same kind of thing that the ATD would do. Let it know what device is doing this, where it's coming from, what IP address, and then counteract can respond to that and then quarantine the host. And then in addition, kind of what I was talking to kind of at the beginning, traditionally we operate in the campus. Very straightforward. That's generally what customers are coming to us for, but the customer gets pretty comfortable with the visibility that CounterAct's actually providing. They start to roll this into the data center. I have found on numerous occasions, XP machines that were some sort of service box that just sits on a little NAS in the data center. Without knowing that, without having the visibility to understand all these devices that are connected there, actually, so I did this in my old company when I was on help desk. I was testing out a solution that required XP to start running the solution on. We didn't end up going to the solution, but left this box underneath my desk for like 2 years. And then when we got CounterAct and deployed it, found it, and I got in trouble. But it was okay because, I found it. So being able to try to track down these things, these are the types of things that companies have a really hard time actually managing. There's a lot going on. You guys have tons of work on your plate with trying to administer all the security that you're expected to. So there's always going to be these gaps. A lot of companies here, time in, time out, that they have everything under control. They have all the visibility that they need. But the reality is that you don't have complete control over the human element. It's very challenging to kind of maintain. Initial integration, Azure is newly added to the platform. So being all the same kind of inspection that we're doing on the campus and in the data center, we're actually doing in the cloud as well. So, and then OT, I kind of mentioned OT to you guys earlier. So that's my presentation. Oh, just a couple examples. Oh, never mind, it's off the screen.